Good morning, Burbs. My name is Azalara, and with the PSO2 NGS global beta coming very soon, and soon meaning like this weekend at the time of this recording, well, there's only a very limited amount of time to play, so I might as well make this video to make you be able to choose the type of weapon and class that you want to spend your time with. Or well, you can also spend your time with like all the weapons if you wanted to, but it never hurts having some more prior knowledge of exactly what you're walking into. So in this video, I'll be explaining exactly 3 different things. Number 1 being exactly how the main class subclass system works in PSO2 New Genesis, because it's significantly different from the regular PSO2 that we have right now. Then I'll be explaining the gameplay style of each weapon and what they can do, since in the beta we'll only be having access to exactly one weapon for each class. And lastly, just recommending you the class combinations, although do remember that none of this is strict at all and you should be experimenting with everything because it's a beta and well, I don't exactly know everything either. And well, you know, in 2 months, maybe I'll just come back and watch this video and be like, man, pass me, you're such a dummy. Sounds about right. So if there's any particular weapon or class that you wanted to skip to, please watch the timestamps. With that said, let's get into looking at exactly how the main class and subclass systems work in PSO2 New Genesis. The most important thing to note is the fact that subclasses do not give you stats anymore. What this means is that, for example, if you have a main class that's like level 50, and then you have a subclass at level 1, it will not make a difference at all. You will still have exactly the same combat power as a subclass that's level 50, since there are no stat differentials. Many of you might be saying right now, but RC, you need levels to get the class skills, right? And the answer actually is no in PSO2 NGS. Your skill points are permanent, shared throughout your account for every single class once you unlock them, and you can actually get every single skill in every single class's skill tree, which means that you absolutely cannot mess up your skill tree no matter how hard you try. The only mistake you could possibly make is not putting in the points. In other words, what it means is that a level 1 class can actually have every single skill point filled in. So because of this, the subclass level literally does not matter. But what does matter is your choice of subclass allows you to use their main weapon on your other main class. For example, if you're playing Ranger Force, you can use Force's Rod on the Ranger main, and without any restriction at all, unlike the base PSO2. In conclusion, the subclass is really used for 2 things. Number 1, the class skills, and number 2, the weapons that your subclass can use. So overall, choosing your main class and subclass isn't really much of a hassle as much as in PSO2. There isn't really much of a set meta right now, because after all, you only need to really concern yourself with the main class skills from the skill tree. So don't be afraid to try any wacky combinations as long as you think the main class skill can benefit your subclass's weapon. And or the fact that your main class weapon gets benefits from your subclass's skill. So now that we know this fact, we can start talking about all the classes and their specific weapons and playstyles, so let's get into it. First of all, we're going to talk about Hunter and the Sword. Being one of the most standard classes in like just about every MMO game ever, the Hunter class in New Genesis is quite a lot faster than regular PSO2. You have lots of AoE options, you have great single target damage, you're extremely safe because you're really tanky from your class skills, and also you have a guard that lets you counter, of course for massive amounts of damage. And it's just honestly one of the most versatile classes in the game, where you can do almost just about everything and also has some of the strongest mobbing tools available right now in PSO2 New Genesis. And funnily also, if not one of the strongest single targets as well. So on the basic level, you have a 5 combo normal attack, in which the 5th hit will hit as hard or even harder than some photon arts. Once you max out your skill tree, every time you parry an enemy attack, you can follow it up with a 5th normal attack, which means that playing Hunter as a counter class is very effective. And to make it even better, you also have guard points on your photon arts. What this means is when you release your photon arts, some of them actually has guard points where you will not take damage, as you can see some examples on the screen. Now speaking of photon arts, let's go over them. The very first big spinny thing is called Twist Zepper in JP, which is a large giant chargeable swirl that literally just like goes forward like a grass cutter and just chops up everything on your screen. Honestly, this is like one of, if not the strongest AoE skills in the game right now. It just does so much damage and the radius is so big. It can also be kind of used as like movement in midair or like as a gap closer, but hey, more uses, more versatile. The second one is called Spiral Edge, which is kind of like the Rising Edge skill, a very classic Phantasy Star skill for this one. It knocks enemies up, helps you reach some stuff that are really high, and it also does a pretty good amount of single target damage. Although, despite how good Spiral Edge is in terms of single target damage, it does not beat the third Hunter Photon Art, which is called Streak Caliber. So this Photon Art is a 3 combo in which you can actually use it 3 times consecutively and it only charges PP for the very first cast of it. However, you actually cannot move while charging these 3 PA combo strings, so if you can actually pull it off, it's very efficient in terms of PP and damage as well, and this is, in my opinion, if not the strongest single target damage in the game right now. But the fact of the matter is, you can only use it on literally a still target, so stuff like a boss is down or something of the sort, because charging it 3 times does take a lot of time after all, so you'll need definitely a down from either like a status effect burn or just a down phase. It's not something that you just really just randomly want to use here and there because you're not really going to hit anything and it takes a while to do all the damage. So yeah, if you're looking for a class that can really just do about everything, be really safe, has great mob clear, has great single target, has great just about literally, like I said, everything, Hunter is always a really good start. Whether you're an old player, whether you're a new player, I think players of just about every level can enjoy this class thoroughly. Now for class recommendations, I think that Hunter can honestly be a main class and really good subclass as well for just about every class. I think that you can play just about every subclass on the Hunter main and be okay, but I've also seen a lot of people who played solo play Techter main instead for the buffs and stuff and then Hunter sub, because the only thing that Hunter main gives you really is the Iron Will, and if you don't really need the Iron Will, you should probably just use Hunter as a sub and just play the sword. Now moving on from Hunter, the next class we're going to be talking about is Fighter, which is going to be something kind of really similar to Hunter in more ways than you might expect. Generally in New Genesis, Fighter's Knuckles is a very fast class in general. In my personal opinion, with playing everything for now, from Japan's closed beta and all, I dare say that Fighter is probably, if not the best feeling class in terms of like how close it is to the base PSO2 in pacing and just in gameplay style. It feels really fast, it's very responsive, you have an on-demand dodge that can also cancel your long animations, and you also have a big counter attack too, so it really rewards you for having good timing. The Knuckles in New Genesis has a 5 normal attack combo, much like the Hunter sword, in which the 5th attack also hits as hard if not harder than a Photon Art. And with Fighter skill tree, once you max it out, every time you use your weapon action sway to be able to dodge enemy attacks, you can counterattack with a 5th normal attack. So it's actually super worth for you to really time that and really just play it full counter style. And as I mentioned earlier, that you can actually cancel out of just about all your attacks with your sway weapon action. It's really easy to really just like get your counters out, unlike Hunter, where some parts you might be locked in like an animation or might feel a little bit clunky. Fighter doesn't have any of that at all. Your Photon Arts are a Swift Rush, which is kind of like the current Pendulum Roll in PSO2, where you do a little bit of some side swings and then you have a finishing punch that does a ton of damage and then fling you backwards. This can be really good for repositioning or just getting out of some tight situations while also dealing DPS as well. And now that you have a PA that repositions you out of battle, you have Tri Drive, which puts you into battle. Kind of like Straight Charge in the regular PSO2, where this is a PA that charges straight into the enemy's face and gives them a 1-2 punch. Awesome! You can also use it to move mid-air as well, so there's a lot of versatility in usage here. And of course, you can't really play the Fist class without playing the Ora Ora style. So of course, there's the Ora 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 versus the Mira 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 Mira, which, I mean, I don't think I really have to explain what it does, but yeah, it's a great mobbing tool. It has a lot of hit count, and it does quite a lot of damage as well, and a nice uppercut at the very end of it. So when it comes to playing Fighter as a whole, you kind of actually want to play Fighter as the main class because your Limit Break skill, it's also called Overload in the global version, well, it only works on your Fighter main. And this skill now, unlike base PSO2, doesn't reduce your health to 25%, but instead it just makes you take a little bit more damage, but you also gain a lot of damage in power. So it's a really nice rework of the mechanic, while also rewarding you in many ways. I do suggest subbing Hunter for this, so playing the classic fighter Hunter, but you're definitely free to experiment. But if you do, please let me know sometimes later as well how you felt about it, and just let's have a good discussion. Rapidly moving forwards from fighter, now we have the ranged classes, and we're going to start off with Ranger. Now, for a lot of you PSO2 players, get the stigma out of your head right now that Ranger is an immobile class, because NGS Ranger is completely different than your imagination right now. The new Genesis Ranger is actually such a high mobility class that can actually play very dynamically in short and long range. There's this new mechanic which I'm going to dub the critical distance, which is kind of like similar to how in normal PSO2 you play with sharpshooter or something like that. But effectively what this critical distance mechanic is that if you're too close you don't do as much damage, and if you're too far you don't do as much damage, so you kind of need to be at exactly the right distance. Now while this might sound really annoying, it is accountable for around like almost 50% of your damage actually, so it's something that you will have to play and really get a feel for and really just master over time. And now because of the fact alone that there is a critical distance mechanic, of course the whole kit of Ranger kind of has to compensate for that by giving you so many mobility tools for you to be able to hit that exact perfect critical distance. Your weapon action is now a small dodge in a certain direction, kind of like Luster in base PSO2. You can see the footage on the screen right now. It's actually quite similar. It's kind of uncanny actually. Or maybe you can just say that this like took inspiration from Luster, or maybe Luster was just the beta, quote unquote, for NGS Ranger. But yeah, these shots also help restore your PP as well, so it's a great tool to really reposition yourself, move around, or even dodge enemy attacks. And then your normal attack is now a stream of bullets. It's not like a 3-hit burst or anything like the regular PSO2 anymore. So you can just spray and pray this indefinitely and really just like move around while you're shooting. There's quite a number of PP restoration tools in the kit of Ranger right now, and especially with the normal attack being so streamlined, it's really easy to really just get your PP back up as well. Now the very interesting part about your weapon action is there's actually another way to use it. If you actually hold down your weapon action key instead of tapping it, it either shoots out a grenade if you're moving in a certain direction, or if you're not tapping any movement keys and you hold down the weapon action key, you move yourself backwards and then put down a trap, which has around like a 30-second cooldown to use either of the grenade or the trap, which also helps you restore PP. But all the PP is going to be useless if you don't have anything to spend them on, right? So let's talk about the photon arts. So the first one we're going to be talking about is called Blaze Shot, and this is effectively the bread and butter of NGS Ranger right now. It is the parallel slider, or slide burst as they call it in global, for PSO2 New Genesis. You can just use it as long as you want, as long as you have the resource points to use it. It's really good because it basically is like your normal attack, but you move faster, you do so much more damage, and you also have like this finishing shot at the very end of it, which is very cool looking. The reason I call it the bread and butter is because this is basically the highest DPS that you can have on Ranger right now, because the other two is a little bit more situational and supplementary to this skill. How I personally really just played NGS Ranger is just restore my PP to full, and then just spam Blaze Shot until my PP is not full, and then, well, just rinse and repeat. The thing is, with the critical distance mechanic, it's kind of really important for you to have these mobility tools and just like these tools where you can just really adjust your positions for having that perfect critical distance. So to supplement Blaze Shot, we have Homing Dart, which instantly locks on to all nearby enemies and just shoots off basically a homing dart onto all the enemies locked on. You can also use this to target multiple parts of a boss as well, so like those really big bosses and stuff where you can target multiple parts. It's really strong. This kind of is like your mobbing tool for Ranger. While it's not the most powerful, it still definitely serves its purpose, and well, better to have it than not, right? Which then you also have another photon art called Raging Shot. This one is a chargeable PA that fires off a small explosive shot, and it pierces enemies, basically. I believe that this one is actually really good to use for the over-the-shoulder view. But generally for just like how Ranger works in general, I don't really find myself using this as much compared to Blaze Shot. That and also the fact that Blaze Shot honestly just looks so much cooler, so yeah. That being said, despite having 3 PAs, Ranger also has a lot more active skills that are main class only available on their skill tree. Number 1, of course, is Weak Bullet, aka Blight Rounds and Global. It works just about exactly the same in mechanic, where you just mark this like one part on the boss and then that part takes more damage. Except the only difference now is that you don't have to load those bullets in your main rifle, but instead it's a skill bar activatable. So you basically shoot Blight Rounds by pressing an active skill, instead of actually shooting your rifle. Personally, I would say that's really useful because it kind of like separates your usage of, well, Weak Bullet and the usage of your actual rifle. It makes it so much easier for casual players to really just like get their hands on here and not mess up any weak bullets and so on. So it's really nice addition for them to do something like this in my opinion. Although it might take a little bit of time to get used to for active PSO2 players, but yeah, I think the change is for the better. Now another thing that's super fun on Ranger right now is that there's this active skill also called the Spread Shot, which is effectively a shotgun that launches you backwards. I had this moment with Cami Cakes where he basically like jumped onto a wall and kicked off it to reach a boss's core that's really high, basically smashed the entire shotgun shell into the core, moving backwards into the perfect critical distance to just blast a photon blast into the enemy's core until it literally just straight up dies. It's probably one of the most cool sequences I've seen and heard about personally. And yeah, these are just the possibilities of playing a high mobility Ranger nowadays in PSO2 New Genesis. You have close range combat, you have long range combat, you're pretty much just versatile for airborne combat as well. So because the fact alone that Ranger kind of really depends on having a lot of PP, getting that PP recharge and then dumping it all down onto Blaze Shot, I highly recommend playing Ranger Force, due to Force having the skill called PP Conversion, which basically cuts down your health a little bit for a higher PP regeneration, and it's really good. But we'll get more into the details of that on a later section. But anyways, regardless, as I mentioned earlier, the Weak Bullet and all that stuff, the Blight Rounds, is a main class skill, and you kind of want to play Ranger for having all those like special bullets, you know? So I do highly recommend playing Ranger as a main class and then finding whatever subclass that you find fit, whether it be the Hunter subclass or the Force subclass. But before we get into all the magic shenanigans, we still have one ranged gunning class to talk about, which is the Gunner class. Gunner in New Genesis, much like the base PSO2, honestly feels very similar. Their weapon actions feel basically the same because it's both a stylish role. There's still the chain mechanic, which is, although a bit different, I'll get into that a little bit later. But the general gist of it is that it's a very airborne class where you kind of just like kite around with your mobility here and there as you dodge all the enemy attacks, build up your chain, get up close, and then burst that chain with really hard hitting abilities. Of course, for none other than tons of damage. So with that said, let's touch up on exactly how chain works in PSO2 New Genesis. The most important thing to understand is the fact that every single PA of Gunner is actually now chargeable. However, charged versions of each photon art is actually not exactly meant for being charged, because what charging does is either number 1, it will trigger the chain to start, or number 2, pop the chain finish. What this means is every single photon art is actually meant to be used by tapping it only instead of charging it, because charging is either the starter or the finisher of the chain. And also, all of your uncharged photon arts can also build the chain. This also applies to your subclass's weapon. You can use it either to help you build the chain, or you can even use it to finish the chain as well. For example, the footage right here as you see on the screen, building the chain with the TMG, swapping to the sword, charging street caliber here for tons of damage. And like, I really don't joke around when I say tons of damage. The other differences are the fact that number 1, chain is not bound to a part of the enemy now. It's actually on you, which means you kind of want to think of it as like the chain building is enhancing the next charge attack that you do. I think that's the most simple way to explain it. And because of this, your friends in your party actually cannot help you build chain. So chain is actually completely an individual thing now, so it's much easier to manage overall. The ideal gameplay of Gunner is literally just to use your weapon action to S-roll here and there, dodging all the enemy attacks while you're building the chain, use high hit count abilities to build your chain really fast, get up close, and then use your hard hitting abilities to break the chain. And that's effectively the Gunner gameplay loop. Because with the Gunner skills and all, if you really reach a high number chain like 100 chain or something like that, you'll be just about refunded almost, if not your entire cooldown by the time that you finish your chain. So now let's talk about the photon arts and how they work. The very first photon art here is Bullet Rave, and this one is going to be your bread and butter. The skill unleashes a flurry of bullets in a big combo, and then finish off with a few finisher shots here and there. This PA can be used for long range, can be used for close range, and because it has such a high hit count, it's something that you'll be using almost just about permanently. You can use it to start and finish chains as well, because the damage is actually very high for this one. You can float in the air, you can kite, you can reposition, you can literally just use it in any situation and be completely fine. Even if it's the only PA that you know how to use on Gunner, honestly I think it would be perfectly fine as well. It's actually that good. But regardless of which, I'm still not going to neglect the other ones, so we're going to talk about the second PA, which is Aimless Rain, which is more or less the same as Shift Period, aka Chronolapse in the global version. So you kind of just do this flip, and then you have this flurry of bullets all around. It's a mobbing tool. And then the last photon art is called Close Bullet. It does 2 quick shots right in front of you that does a good amount of damage. It can generally be used to finish off the chain and stuff, because it does a really nice quick burst of damage. But honestly, in my opinion, it really depends on you whether you prefer to use Close Bullet here as a chain finisher, or just charge up another Bullet Rave to do your chain finisher on a safe distance. Personally, I actually don't know which one does more damage, but I guess we'll just have to find out. Anyways, when it comes to class combinations, I would personally say Gunner Hunter is if not one of the best combinations, because the fact of the matter is that honestly, I don't even use Aimless Rain because I think it's a very slow mobbing tool compared to just using the Hunter spinny thing. And also, Hunter's PAs can be charged, so you actually can pop the chain with Hunter's charged PAs, and it's very, very strong. Which is also another reason why a lot of people have been playing Gunner Techter as sub as well, because the one photon arts can actually be charged and you can do tons of damage with it as well. And you also have access to techniques, which can also be a really good source of just mob clear and just having a lot of versatility to do a lot of everything. So I feel like these two combinations are just the best for the Gunner main, and then you kind of have to play Gunner main because Chain is kind of, stuck to main class only, so that's one of the reasons you play Gunners to begin with, right? Anywho, lastly now we'll be moving into the space magic shenanigans of Force and Techter. I kind of have to put these two in the same category only because they share exactly the same usage of techniques with only just a few differences in the gameplay. So first of all, before we even talk about the playstyles and anything, I'll be covering all the techniques and how they work first, and then I'll be covering the playstyles of each individual between Force and Techter right after I finish talking about all the techniques. First and foremost, we have to talk about the most basic foyer text, right? Which is, well, foyer. And it literally just shoots a fireball in front of you. Basic fireball spell, who would have thought? Now when you charge foyer, it creates a long-range explosion of flames that literally looks super cool at the targeted position or whatever you're locked onto. So now you might be thinking to yourself, wait, something's going on here, because the charged foyer isn't really like the normal foyer that's uncharged. So what happens here in New Genesis is that techniques are different when charged and uncharged. So say a charged version of something works completely differently from the uncharged version. So technically one technique equals 2 because the charged works differently than the uncharged. Both of them basically have their uses, and then it's up to you to find out the perfect situation to use all of them. So with that, let's move on to the next set of techniques, which is giveaway. So normally giveaway uncharged here is going to be just a fire around the user here and there. It's a pretty nice mobbing tool, although you have to be really up close for it, so that's one thing. But the charged version though is literally you shoot down a towering flame pillar down to the enemy, and it's just wow, that is such a visually cool thing. I love that. I don't care if it does no damage, I want to use that thing forever. And that's exactly how I feel about the charged version of giveaway. Now, one very important thing to know before I talk about ice techs is the fact that it actually has a passive now. So basically every time you hit like an uncharged ice tech on an enemy, it builds up this mark, kind of like the phantom marker or Il Barda, where once you have the full mark and you use a charged ice tech, it just goes boom and it just does tons of damage. So this honestly already adds a huge depth of gameplay for you to really think about when using ice techniques. And also due to this, unlike the fire and lightning techs, the ice techniques actually does not change between the charged and uncharged versions. So the charged version is basically just a stronger version of the uncharged version, but it's generally just used to detonate the ice tech marker. So Barta here is basically just used to lob, a normal stream of ice here and there, nothing too special, and then Gibarda is just like spray a cone of like ice right in front of you. So both of them are used for their different situations, and yeah, pretty basic, that's not a bad thing. Next one we have the lightning techs, which is the Zonde type techs. So what Zonde does on tap is basically just shoot down a single lightning, and that looks very lame compared to the charged version, which shoots down multiple lightnings. I think I was supposed to say like multiple lightning bolts, but hey, well, yeah, multiple lightnings, good enough, right? Don't blame me, please, I'm sorry. But yeah, this one is just kind of similar, except the charged version just has like multiple hits and whatnot, so it hits a lot harder. But by doing just like this tap single hit, it's actually a lot faster. So it's more or less just a trade-off that you have to really think about. And then now we have Gazonde, which unfortunately Gazonde in NGS is really not as much of a meme as it is in PSO2 right now. So Gazonde basically creates like a lightning field that electrocutes enemy within it. Pretty cool. And then the charged version kind of leaves like, how do you say it? It's kind of like a ball of lightning that literally just like hits down enemies here and there. So it's kind of like really similar in concept, but I guess the lightning ball looks a bit cooler. And yeah, that's about it for all the techniques. The rest of it really will be used for just practical application, and I'm pretty sure they're going to add so many more techniques in the future, so honestly don't be worried about the diversity right now. And plus, most like casting classes in MMO games and stuff are late bloomers, so this is completely expected. Anyways, we're going to start off by talking about the playstyle of Force. So Force in NGS here is meant to be more of like a mid-range, kind of like brawly type caster-ish kind of thing, where your weapon action is actually a guard, surprisingly, which if you guard the enemy attack successfully, you restore 30 PP. What this means is on some encounters, you will definitely have to be very up close to be able to counter the enemy attacks if you really want to have your PP restoration game like really on point. While you can play a little bit further by just like spamming your Rod's normal attacks because it's kind of like a pretty powerful version of Rod shoots, some people is even saying that, just using your Rod normal attacks is even more DPS than techniques. I have no personal experience of this, but hey, it's something to really think about, right? So you basically just spam that and just spam your techniques as you please, and then that's basically just the normal rotation of how you play Force in general. A lot of people may be expecting like a very like long range glass cannony type kind of caster when you think of magic in MMO games and stuff like this, but in PSO2 New Genesis it's really not like that, so it's a bit of something you just have to pretty much just adapt to. Although with the Force's guard and all, you can actually make some really sick plays like the one that's showing on screen right now, and honestly it just looks super cool. But yeah, I just really think that like to utilize your PP restoring shield, I guess that's what I'm gonna call it, you kind of have to play Force as like a mid-range thing where you're in range of the enemy and just really ready to counter the enemy's attacks and whatnot. So if Force is mid-range, Techter is a close-range combat mage. Realistically, the only thing different about Techter to Force is the fact that you have a wand instead of a rod, and then with the wand you have 2 photon arts which can be used to really enhance your combat powers, and also the wands with the wand smacking, element changing, smashes, and all that really cool stuff. Tech explosions, boom yada yada, all those like space magic shenanigans and all that stuff. So how exactly does all this work? So to do the tech infusions on your normal attacks, basically what happens is the wand takes the element of your last charge technique. So basically if you charge a fire tech, your wand explosions are going to be fire. If you charge an ice tech, your wand explosion is going to be ice. If you charge a lightning tech, your wand explosions are going to be lightning. So on and so forth. Why this is important is because when you match the enemy's weak element, you actually do bonus damage. So while you're going in there and smashing all the enemies, you also have a weapon action which is also a guard, except that this guard actually gives you a counterattack. So Techter is really suited to being down and dirty and really just fighting in the midst of everything. But to cause even more chaos, let's take a look at our tools. The first photon art that Juan has access to is called Wave Hit. This photon art basically just slams the wand like 2 times in front of you, and it's just like BAM! BAM! With your tech explosions and all. It just feels so heavy in impact, and this is really cool. I like it. You can also use it to move in mid-air too, which is not really that good to do, but hey, it's possible. Because in mid-air you don't really have any movement options, and then your normal attacks to do your tech explosion swings, you're just grounded in place, you can't move. So having any aerial mobility is pretty cool, I guess, but it's not the best. The damage is good though. And anyways, the next PA is called Rapid Smash, which apparently, I mean, it's basically a clone of the current PSO2 wand PA Heavy Hammer right now, in which you just chart up this like one heavy hit if you want to go, or you can just use a uncharged version just for like a quick forward dash. So yeah, the whole gameplay of Techter is really just being in the midst of the chaos, really just like buffing all your friends with the shifter and the ban and all that stuff, and just honestly really just thriving in the chaos. You watch the enemy's weak element, use your techniques, and then just smash them right away with the element they're weak into. And it's also really safe because you're in there with a guard and stuff, and you have counter attacks too. It's like, yeah, you're kind of like a melee paladin-ish, mage-ish kind of warrior. I'm not sure how to explain it, but yeah, I guess you can say kind of like a magic knight? Yeah, I guess that's a pretty cool way to put it. And then the only thing to note really is the fact that, of course, Shift to the Band is a Techter main class skill, so if you want the supportive skills and whatnot, you have to play Techter main anyways. And boom, there you go, all 6 classes covered. I generally hope you found this video really useful and really saves you a lot of time trying all the classes and whatnot, since we do have very limited time in the PSO2 NGS beta after all. Whew, that was a lot of classes to cover, so imagine when the real game comes out, right? We're gonna have way more weapons and stuff. But anyways, for all of you who's watching this video and don't have access to the PSO2 NGS closed beta yet this weekend, I have a giveaway that I'm doing on my Discord, link in the description below. So there's going to be 10 winners that I'm going to be personally giving out codes to access the PSO2 New Genesis closed beta for the global server coming this weekend. All you have to do is join my Discord server, go to the NGS giveaway channel, and then click on the party hat thing, and then boom, you're automatically entered in the giveaway. So yeah, if you don't have access to the NGS closed beta yet, your chance is here with the giveaway. It's just like playing PSO2 all over again and hoping that 15-star weapon you wanted would drop from the boss. But anyways, regardless of joining the closed beta or not, I'll be streaming it the whole weekend basically, so feel free to join me. I'll be streaming on my YouTube as per usual. So all of you, take care of yourselves and don't forget to smile. I'll see you this weekend in the PSO2 NGS Global Beta.